Hello, VC. It's your boy Jeff here again. Making time, forcing time to make a video so I can get into my one of my best buds in the VC's contest. Of course, you all know Emma. Channel is 8 Vinyl Low, and she recently crossed the 500 subscriber mark, which is fantastic. Congrats on that, Emma. And there's no doubt in my mind you'll be crossing the 1,000 subscriber mark before too long. No doubt in my mind at all. Yeah, like I said, she's one of my best buds in the VC. And I've watched a few other entries into this contest. And I want to second something that John from the Digital Gramophone said about Emma. She brings a couple things to the VC that the VC badly needs. First is diversity. The VC needs women. Not to put it too bluntly, but if I see another channel featuring a bearded guy showing records, my head's gonna bust open. So we have a small contingent of ladies on the VC, and they do great stuff, but we need more because the VC is not a sausage party. There's room for everybody. So we need more women, and that's a good thing. So the other thing is youth. Emma's in her early 20s, and John alluded to this. I don't think it validates us old guys' musical taste, because it is what it is, and that's not really what I need personally, but maybe others do. But it's very cool to see someone who's in their early 20s getting excited about records that I grew up on or were new when I was that age. So, like, for example, you have to watch her last video, the one where she got VCLT. I sent her something, and Legendary Jim sent her something. But you have to see the end of that video, because Jim had sent her one of her all-time grails, if not her number one grail. And the emotional reaction of that was just so pure and perfect. It's a wonderful thing to watch. So if you're not already a subscriber, if you haven't already seen that video, you need to check it out, because it crystallizes a lot of what the VC is all about to me, which is giving and generosity and excitement over music and passion about, bands you love. And of course, there's Jinx again, and there's Cheap Trick is obviously her favorite band. So, and there goes my dog, as usual. Okay, but trying not to get off track here. But anyway, like the Robert Cray album that I gave her, she was very excited over that album because she'd never heard it before. That's an album I grew up on. And that album's 3 years old. It came out in 86. I was a sophomore in high school in 86. So it's nice to see, people of a younger generation get into the same kind of music that I did and others do around here too. So it there she goes again. And so it gives me hope for the future, and it's just fun to watch. So I know I've sent her a lot of records, but that's because I want her collection to get bigger, and I want her to have good stuff. And just as another aside, Christmas is coming. Just saying. Some of you, and I'm only saying this because I have a very hard time making videos here lately, so I'm just going to insert this here. Over the next month, some of you might be getting something from Santa, care of me. So I'm not going to say who. I think one or two of you might know already, but for the rest of you, it's going to be a surprise. So I'm just going to leave that there. Okay, 5 minutes in and I haven't even started talking about the contest. Her contest for her 500 sub milestone is called Playing in the Band, and you have to show different albums featuring different parts of the band, like guitar and drums and bass and keyboards and vocals. And I think I threw in another one too for horns. I think I have that in here. So featuring, you know, stellar work on those respective instruments. So I've got my picks right here. I'm gonna have a sip of coffee before I start talking some more. And here we go. I'm gonna start with guitar, which was actually probably the most difficult category to pick, because, you know, guitar work is, there's so many choices to choose from that picking just one was very, very difficult. And some of these picks might be obvious, others not. I know this might be an obvious pick for me because you guys know how much I love Carlos Santana. This is his album Amigos. And the reason I went with Santana is that nobody can get as much out of their guitar tone as Carlos Santana. Nobody can make you feel that guitar cry the way he can do it. And the song that's on this album is called Europa. And it's an instrumental. And he just hangs it all out there with his guitar, and it's just an amazing track. Here's the back of the cover, but it doesn't really give you the song titles. This is probably one of my all-time favorite songs by Santana, and in general, is Europa. I just love the sound of that guitar. He just makes it cry, and he can draw it out, and he really makes you feel something with it. Not saying that other guys can't. Not saying that other more famous guitarists can't either, but I went with this. It's kind of one of the things I gravitated to when I first started thinking about this contest, what I was going to pick. So this was my choice for guitar work. Carlos Santana. The album is Amigos. Next, we're going to go to bass. This might also be an obvious choice, but I went with John Entwistle from The Who. I know I could have easily gone with Keith Moon in the drums category, but I went with John Entwistle instead from The Who. And Entwistle is, he plays the bass almost like a lead guitar. He played lead bass basically in his time with The Who. And this album, Who's Next, featured a lot of tracks from the failed Pete project called Lifehouse. It was the famously scrapped album, but those scraps are pretty damn good, and this is a pretty damn good album. But just listening to the bass, because I've heard these songs so many times that after a while, even if you come across it on the radio, you just focus on different parts of it. If you focus on Entwistle's bass on a lot of these tracks from this time period, it's really amazing. He's not just keeping the beat or the rhythm. He's doing more with his bass than your average bass player in a rock band setting. We're not going into jazz or any of that other stuff. In the rock setting, he's pretty virtuoso with his bass guitar. So that's the reason why I went with John Entwistle and Who's Next. Drums. We're going to do drums next. Another one that, how can you say no to, is John Bonham. In fact, just as I was picking the albums for these, and I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to use for the drum category, my wife goes, "You have to go with Bonham. There's nobody else but John Bonham." She goes, "Except for maybe Phil Collins, but you got to do Bonham." So I agreed with her. And of course, Led Zeppelin 4 showcases some of his most famous drum work. I mean, what was the famous story when they recorded this album, when they were doing When the Levee Breaks? They had his drum kit in the hallway of this castle wherever Headley Grange, I think it was, they were recording it. And he was hitting the drums so hard that they had to back the mics off so he wouldn't blow them out because he was hitting the drums so hard. Which is why that song has such a almost kind of ghostly quality to it. It has like an echoey, celestial kind of quality to it. Is that the right word? I don't know. But all throughout this album is fantastic drum work from John Bonham, one of the all-time great drummers, rock drummers. So, might be an obvious pick, but obvious pick for a reason. I mean, the guy was just so good. And we love Bonham. So there you go. Keyboards. Another probably obvious choice for artist, but maybe not obvious pick for album. This is Elton John. The album is 11/17/70. And I'm recording this on 11/18. Ha ha ha. So this album just passed its 49th birthday yesterday. This is a reissue. I believe the Record Store Day version from a couple years ago expanded this album and put the whole radio show concert on it. But this is just a reissue of the original. This is when Elton John was, young and hungry. He was just playing in a trio, just with bass and drums. So he's really carrying the load, with the melody and the rhythm, and of course the singing. He's working hard on this album, and it's easy to think of Elton John and think of, the big fancy costumes, the big spectacle stadium shows, and all this big drama. But it's easy to forget what a great piano player Elton John is. And you really see that in this album here. In fact, the version of Take Me to the Pilot on this album I love even more than the studio version. This is the version of that song that I always reach for whenever I'm wanting to hear some good Elton, And early throughout his career, you get a lot of great piano playing, and that kind of got obscured later in his career. But if you focus on a lot of his early stuff, you'll really see just what a stellar piano player Elton John is. So that was why I went with this choice for keyboards, 11/17/70 by Elton. Now, we're going to go to vocals. This was another one that was very difficult. There was so many different directions I could have gone. Male singer, female singer. Do I want to go rock or soul or country? No, not country. I'm just kidding. And very different spectrum of styles of music. And the thing that I went with for this pick, which is Portishead, Beth Gibbons is the vocalist in Portishead, as you might know. I love this album, and I've got a couple of other Portisheads from that I got from BCLT from John and Brad, and I adore those albums. And one of the reasons why is because of her vocals. They're hypnotic. They're kind of spacey. They're kind of she's got a great voice to begin with, and it just grabs me, just draws me in. So that's why I went with Beth Gibbons in the category of vocals. Great, great stuff. And if you haven't heard any Portishead, highly recommended. Highly recommended. I think I have all their albums but one, I think. But in any case, that was my choice for vocals. And then I added on an extra category for horns. And of course, when you think of horn bands, first thing you think of is Chicago. Their first album here, Chicago Transit Authority. And I know you're like, really, Jeff? Come on. But if you listen to this first album, you know, before they became, you know, the sappy ballad crappy band in the 80s with Peter Cetera, you'll dig this a lot more. And the horns and this album and their first couple of albums were pretty integral. I can't talk today. To their sound. Whereas later in their career, it seems like they just kind of forced it in there. But in these early albums, the horns really add to the sound and are really made Chicago unique in that regard. So, and I love bands with horn sections anyway, and Chicago was one of the bands that did it the best. So that was my pick for horns in the playing in the band contest. So there you go. Hope you liked it. Hope this was suitable for your contest, Emma. Hope you enjoyed it. And to all the rest of you, I will hopefully be back sooner than later. I'm hoping. I'm trying my best, guys. So, till next time, everybody take care. It's your boy Jeff. Peace, and I'll see you.